I'm going to read 3 poems from my new book. Then I'm going to read a few poems that are kind of in the background to that book. This is a book called Shut Up, You're Fine, Poems for Very, Very Bad Children. Shut up, you're fine is what your parents, or at least mine, said after they hit you. And, you know, it is always an interesting thing to say because if they hit you, they don't want you to be fine. Therefore, well, you get the logic problem there. Another thing that my parents would say was, you're not hurt, you just think you are. Which, you know, you had a lot of time to meditate on while you were... Anyway, the first poem in the book, Had It Coming. That was another thing my parents would say after they hit you. They'd say, you had it coming. Had it coming. Hush now, don't cry, my wayward son. You couldn't see you were becoming someone who'd study manual arts, rough carpentry, not even plumbing. Mother smelled, and father too, the cigarettes that you've been bumming. We searched beneath your bed and found the dirty books that you've been thumbing. And what about your so-called friends, the criminals and thugs you're chumming around with at the mini-mart? They hang with you and think they're slumming. And as we yelled, you shrugged and snorted, eyeballs rolling, fingers drumming. You sighed, picked up your guitar, tuned, retuned it, started strumming. Your father cursed and slammed the door. I slapped you till your head was humming. Hush now, don't cry, my wayward son. You little shit, you had it coming. And then you can see the kid. This is Barry Moser's illustration of the kid who just got hit. One of the other things you have to do when you're kids, kiss your grandmother goodnight, and it's always, you know, I don't know about your grandmother, but mine is shave. We won't talk about that. Kiss grandma goodnight. The old ones smell funny. They don't smell of gum, pie, or pink candy, but gardenia and mum. They smell of white flowers, huge dying flowers, and sometimes gin, which kills the long hours. They insist that you kiss their shrunken gray lips before they hand over licorice whips. They'll sulk all alone and guzzle cheap gin or talk to dead husbands to feel loved again. But pucker and kiss them, act like a chum, lie that you love them, they're what you'll become. There's not a lot of comfort in these poems. Well, actually, I think I'm going to stop with those and give you a taste of where these poems come from. I actually got started on them while I was reading John Hollander, the poet and critic, has an essay on Robert Louis Stevenson's children poems, which I'd always hated when I was a kid. They seemed so sappy. And so I was reading that essay about the same time that I got one of those internet joke lists of children's books that will never be written. The Little Sissy Who Snitched. Daddy Drinks Because You Cry. And I thought, well, maybe you could take that South Park, Beavis and Butthead, Malcolm in the Middle mentality and slam them up against children's rhymes. So I wrote a couple of these things. I was vaguely aware of, not really clear in my head, though I'd read some of these Edward Lear poems like, there was a young lady whose nose was so long that it reached to her toes. So she hired an old lady whose conduct was steady to carry that wonderful nose. There was a young lady of Troy whom several large flies did annoy. Some she killed with a thump, some she drowned at the pump, and some she took with her to Troy. These were written about 1848, about the time Walt Whitman had finished the first edition of Leaves of Grass. So, and yet they sound pretty darn contemporary. There was a young lady of Clare who was sadly pursued by a bear. When she found she was tired, she abruptly expired, that unfortunate young lady of Clare. So if there's a theme here, it's going to be children and acts of violence. There are, let me see, there's this great book. This one is, there's two books in one here. This is called Ruthless Rhymes for Heartless Homes and More Ruthless Rhymes for Heartless Homes. The first edition was 1896, I believe. The second one, 30 or 40 years later. The stern parent. Father heard his children scream, so he threw them in the stream, saying as he drowned the third, children should be seen, not heard. Calculating Clara. O'er the rugged mountain's brow, Clara threw the twins she nursed, and remarked, I wonder now, which will reach the bottom first? Mr. Jones. There's been an accident, they said. Your servant's cut in half. He's dead. Indeed, said Mr. Jones, and please send me the half that's got my keys. Now, one of the poems in that had, no, we got to wait because we got to do Hilaire Belloc. Belloc wrote cautionary tales for children. In one of the early cautionary tales, what is the name of the boy? Oh, the boy who, I don't forget what he did, but the lion ate him all but his head. There is his head. This was Edward Gorey, the great Edward Gorey, redid this, re-illustrated the Belloc, and we get the same boy, same head floating around on the page. The only Belloc poem I'm going to read to you is Henry King. The title is Henry King, who chewed bits of string and was early cut off in dreadful agonies. The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. Did you do this when you were a kid, Jason? Did you ever chew string?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I shouldn't admit that I did. Rubber bands, did you ever chew a rubber band?
Rubber bands, I think so.
All right. See, these are warnings to children. Actually, if you look them up in Wikipedia, they're discussed under cautionary tales. Now I got to back up. The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. At last he swallowed some which tied itself in ugly knots inside. Physicians of the utmost fame were called at once, but when they came, they answered as they took their fees, there is no cure for this disease. Henry will very soon be dead. His parents stood about his bed, lamenting his untimely death, when Henry, with his latest breath, cried, "Oh, my friends, be warned by me, that breakfast, dinner, lunch, and tea are all the human frame requires. With that, the wretched child expires." Now, when they reissued Ruthless Rhymes for Heartless Homes, one of the poems in here was of Little Billy. Now, Little Billy, I meant to mark Little Billy and I forgot to do it. Little Billy grew into these anonymous poems that were popular. I haven't quite found the date for these because they're anonymous, but they're called Little Willies, the Little Willie poems. And Little Willie, wearing sashes, fell in the grate and was burned to ashes. Wearing his new sash, fell in the grate and was burned to ashes. Now, though it grows very chilly, no one wants to poke up Willie. You know that one? Well, in this book it was Willie. Well, those spun out and became the Little Willies. Little Willie, mean as hell, threw his sister in the well. Mama said when drawing water, "Gee, it's hard to raise a daughter." In the family drinking well, Willie pushed his sister Nell. She's dead all right, the water killed her. Now they drink it through a filter. And, the rule of these seems to be they have to have Little Willie mentioned by name and someone dies. Well, we don't exactly see Grandma die, but she's going to. Little Willie, full of glee, put radium in Grandma's tea. Now he thinks it's quite a lark to see her shining in the dark. So there's the background for some of the things that I was trying to do. And you can see that they're very British. The Little Willies start to become American. But they have that droll British difference. I thought, well, I was hoping that mine were more American. This is the cow. Did you ever think about, I had a cousin that was in 4-H and he raised his cow. I think the cow was named Whitey. And somehow, as he got up every morning at 6 to groom Whitey, and I think Whitey won first or second prize at the county fair. And then suddenly, Whitey was gone, because you know what they do. They auction the winners off immediately. And then, well, let's just say, Whitey gets butchered quickly thereafter. This was a shock to my cousin, and apparently somebody's told me that this was traditional, that you tell the kids that it's not their cow you're eating, but they swapped Whitey for somebody else's cow. And this worked really well until one day my uncle, with a mouthful of Whitey, looked at my cousin and said, "Damn, you did a good job raising this cow." And there was much screaming and running away from the table and slamming of doors and crying for a while. The cow. I love the red cow with all of my heart. She's gentle when pulling my cherry red cart. We take her rich milk and swallow it down. With nothing, it's white. With chocolate, brown. When she grows too feeble to give us fresh cream, we'll slit her red throat, hang her from a beam, and pull out her insides to throw to the dogs, just as we do when we slaughter the hogs. We've now owned 6 cows that I can remember. We'll drain them and gut them, skin and dismember, package and label them, and stock up the freezer. We all love beefsteak, from baby to geezer. Tossed on the grill, the bloody steaks sputter. As a last grateful tribute, so humble we stutter. We offer up thanks with a reverent mutter, then slather her chops with her own creamy butter.